Is Jalen Warren the guy? Look, I think we all know, or we can all assume that Najee Harris is not coming back. I think we've covered that. Everybody's covered that. It's a pretty good assumption Najee Harris won't be back with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Didn't want to pick up his fifth-year option. So since they didn't, it's time to move on with another avenue. Now, here's the one thing to keep in mind is that Jalen Warren, technically, he's a free agent. Now, it's restricted, and it's going to depend on what restriction tag that the Steelers place on him. But yeah, he's a restricted free agent. Now, basically what that means is that I think there's three different tags. Matter of fact, I'm positive. There's one where you don't get any draft picks. Then there's a second round tender and then a first round tender. So all three of those options the Steelers can place on a restricted free agent. I would guess they probably don't put a draft pick free agent on it because it's the least amount of money that the Steelers would have to pay, and somebody could pay him. So I would bet that's kind of what it is. But for the most part, the Steelers are going to want to bring him back because teams, unless somebody just knocks his socks off, I don't think that teams are going to be out there throwing huge dollars at Jalen Warren because they know the Steelers can match it. So I would suspect that they bring him back in that case. So let's just assume that the Steelers bring him back. Now, let's go over some of the numbers. The numbers look pretty good for Jalen Warren, as far as he's got 1,674, career rushing yards. Pretty good in 3 seasons. He's averaging 4.48 yards a carry. I mean, that's pretty good. 6 touchdowns. It's not bad for the amount of touches that he gets as far as carries. He's got another 127 catches, 894 yards. I mean, he can do some things. Looking at those numbers, that tells you that he can be an every down running back. Now, here's where the issue comes in, is that his effectiveness, and we've seen it as the Steeler, is that it starts to plummet some once he gets the carries and touches above 17. You start getting higher numbers. Number one, injuries come into play. He's not the biggest guy. Number two, the effectiveness for Jalen Warren is that he's always been part of a 1-2 punch, and he's been the 2 of that punch. Yeah, there's been several games where he's gotten more carries, more touches overall than Najee Harris. Absolutely, that's been the case. But for the most part, he's been the number 2 of that 1-2 punch, almost like a change of pace type of a guy. Has he been effective? Absolutely. But again, his touches have been between 12 and 17. Is that his most effective place? I kind of think that it is, people. Now, do you want him to be a guy that gets 25 touches a game? I'm not sure. And when I mean 25 touches, 25 carries. It might be upwards of 32 touches a game when you consider anything out of the backfield. Who knows? Is that too much? Do you still want him to be the second guy, or want him to be the first guy, but still kind of limit the amount of touches he has per game so that he can stay fresh as long as possible? I just think that's kind of the thing, because where do the Steelers go in the draft? I think I've said it on several occasions. It would be GM and organization franchise malpractice if the Steelers don't take a running back in this draft. I don't care if they sign somebody in free agency or not. They have to take a running back in this draft. There's too many good ones. There's been several years where, you're thinking, well, we got to reach for a running back. We might need a running back. We got to take somebody. Okay, great. But now it's an abundance. So, yes, the Steelers absolutely need to draft a guy. And who do they do? Or, what kind of running back do you get? I mean, in the first round, I think Ashton Genty is the guy. If the Steelers were going to go out and draft a guy in the first round, it would be Ashton Genty. I don't necessarily think they should do that in the first round. Not necessarily. I don't think they should do that. But crazier things have happened in the draft. If the positions that they want and need early, if there's a big run on those, maybe you do take the running back. Just something to keep in mind. Second round, there's a couple of guys. Amarian Hampton, there's Caleb Johnson. Both of those guys. Look, I'm on record saying I think Hampton's the best back in the draft. Nobody else agrees with me. That's fine. I don't need anybody else to agree with me. I like what he brings to the table. I'll be interested to see what he runs, you know. But yes, I like Hampton a lot. I definitely like. Look, I was down on Caleb Johnson early out of Iowa, but I like him. And he's going to be a second, maybe a early third round guy. Some people have soured on him as of late. I've been the exact opposite. I was down on him early. I kind of like him more now that I've studied a little bit more on him. I like Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. In the third round, look, it's the tandem out of Ohio State. You know, Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson. Both of those guys. If the Steelers were to go in the third round, I think they'd be available. A lot of people like Henderson, maybe the late second round. Who knows? But I like either one of them. Again, Judkins, I need to see what he's going to run. You know, I'd like to see him what he's going to run. But I like both of those guys. You know, and then the fourth round, this is the guy I think if we could get him in the fourth round, this is some of the best value pick I think that's out there in the entire draft is Devin Neal. If the Steelers could get Devin Neal in the fourth round, I would love it. You know, does a little bit of everything. But again, it's another guy. I want to see him run. I want to see him run. He's not the breakaway guy, but he's got some speed. He's definitely got power. He's got speed. He's got vision. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Small hands, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield, tracks it well. So I like Devin Neal. Now, here's the thing. We're losing Najee Harris. So what style of back do you want? Look, people think of because Jaylen Warren is smaller that he's some speedster. He's not. He's more of a bowling ball type, got some speed, but he's not just this speed back. Well, people wondered why Najee Harris, he's not fat. Well, Najee ran a 4.66 at the combine. So I don't know why people thought that he was going to be fast. He was in the best shape of his life at the combine. The only thing he's done since then is taken a pounding for 4 years in the National Football League. So you're not going to be as fast and as spry. And he isn't. But I think the Steelers got to go with some speed. Not little guys. I'm just saying guys that have breakaway speed. Somebody that if they hit a hole going downhill, they're taking it the distance. You know, that wasn't Najee Harris. That wasn't his game. That's not Jaylen Warren either. That's not his game. I think the Steelers need that. They need a guy that, you know what, you give me a little bit of daylight, I bust through that hole and I am gone, and there's nobody that can catch me. We need some of that. But I also don't think we need that in a guy that weighs 195 pounds. I'm out on that too. So I don't want a guy that's, like I said, 195 pounds, 6 foot 195, that, yeah, he's a speed demon, but he's going to be, you know, constantly in the injury room every 3 weeks because he's banged up here, banged up there. We need somebody in that draft. There's several of these guys, man. And again, later on, other names. But as far as Jaylen Warren is concerned, you know, that's what I'm looking at. Is like, I think he works better in a tandem. He's been in a tandem. And I don't think that we need to do anything different than that. Give him his opportunity to be the man, though. Give him that opportunity. And if he can do it, great. But we're also drafting a guy that we're going to put a ton of pressure. Competition breeds a lot of things in this world, and especially in the National Football League. Competition is a good thing. It's a good thing. And that's what the Steelers need to incorporate at the running back position. That's not a knock on anybody. That's not a slap in the face to anybody. That's just saying the organization is trying to get as good as it possibly can on the offensive side of the football, get as many weapons as it can, and building and creating competition at the running back position is one way to be able to do that. We got to do that in this draft. So let's get to the first poll question then. What can we do? If Jaylen Warren ends up having to carry, let's get back to the poll question. So if Jaylen Warren ends up having to carry the running back room in 2025 in Arthur Smith's offense, do you think he'll be able to equal what Najee Harris has done? A, yes, one, or B, no one? It's a good question. It's a real good question because while Najee wasn't the flashiest guy and the most explosive guy, Najee was still productive. I mean, look, 1,000 yards, 1,100 yards is definitely not what it used to be. I'm the first person to tell you that. You average that over a 17-game schedule, that's not that much. It just isn't. But he was there every game. And there's something to be said for that. He was there and he was productive, as productive as he could be. So, and he didn't fumble the football. So that's something to be said about a running back. Can Jaylen Warren be that guy with an uptick of his carries? I'll be interested to see what you guys have to say about that. Let's move on, people.